Greetings to all the new and familiar faces, and welcome to the vanilla build of the Fisher Enclave City. We are currently viewing the completed modless version that was done offline, which we are now recreating for this YouTube series. In this modless version, I merged the forest with the farming industry by carefully painting the industry districts separately. And in the modded version, we are going in a different direction by placing the forest industry on this side of the map. This is Captain Ahvious, and welcome to an advanced guide to forest industry. If you are just joining us between the season, don't get confused. This is not the final forest industry design. We have merely maxed to level 5 and unlocked all the forestry buildings, which we can now finalize to a permanent design. I am going to go ahead and delete the lower tiered buildings because we of course would be aiming to utilize mostly the level 5 structures. The lower tiered buildings can simply be used for a variety of building models, but you primarily want to focus on using the higher tiered buildings, such as the engineered wood plant for plain timber and the pulp mill to produce paper. We have cleared the unwanted buildings, and we will start by establishing that this will be the area for forest extractor buildings. We also need to plan out what other structures we intend to add in this relatively small area. I generally like to look at the features of the building models and figure out what other buildings can mix and match with each other. For instance, take notice how the forestry workers barracks, main building, and the various storage buildings have built-in conifer trees. That is a very important detail that you can use in design because the plantations can be specified as conifer trees. And if you combine them together, you can make something truly creative. However, take note that these buildings will require a flat surface, otherwise expect to have edge cracks around the structure. But since this barracks already has built-in conifer trees, we can simply hide the cracks by using the same trees. Here's a fun fact. Plantations will conform and follow the contour of slopes, and is therefore more versatile when it comes to design. Please ignore the pollution, for it will dissipate over time. Basically, in this area, we will only be utilizing buildings that do not produce pollution, such as extractors, other auxiliary, and storage buildings. So we have determined the buildings that we want to use for the area. Now let's analyze the actual area itself. By looking at the landscape, you'll notice that it is not flat. To avoid building edge cracks, we will need to flatten certain portions to place down the described buildings. We also need to redo the industry medium road, which is equivalent to an avenue, and make sure that it is not parallel to the border of the map. We are simply avoiding to make it look too obvious that we are on the edge of the map while in cinematics view. Probably the biggest concern, or why most players avoid using the industry's DLC, is the massive amount of traffic it produces due to all the industry trucks. However, industry's DLC is the most profitable source of income compared to the other DLCs. A safe way to play is to simply replace or use a combination of dirty yellow industries with offices. However, after a time, it becomes redundant, whereas Industries DLC provides options of using farming, forestry, oil, ore, and unique factories that really make your city much more attractive. Instead of being afraid of using Industries DLC, we will overcome our fear of industry traffic with the following tips and tricks. To reduce traffic, you want to avoid attaching any buildings that produces traffic to avenues. For instance, these extractor buildings will constantly have trucks delivering and returning to their respective facilities, so we want to avoid placing them on the avenue directly. However, for this example, I will allow this plantation to be connected to the avenue, while the others I will flip around by adding a dirt road behind them, then reattaching the buildings. I want to decorate our forest extractor area by adding in some fences. A fair warning to all the vanilla viewers that what I'm about to show you is extremely tedious, but it is the only vanilla way to accomplish this, and in the end is all worthwhile. So notice how this fence has ample space because we have at least one unit, while going to the other side we do not. It is completely flush to the avenue. No matter how you try to bring it really extremely close, it is simply not possible. But there is a vanilla solution to this in order to add an extra tile. So what you simply need to do is you actually just need to redo the entire avenue. Simply extend a perpendicular road from the avenue, then shift the avenue placement by 1 unit. Alright, so now we have definitely ample space to add in our fencing, and on the other side we are going to do the same exact thing by deleting the dirt road and providing an extra unit in order to make space for fencing. Now we're going to complete this entire process all throughout this avenue. And then we're going to redo the same process on the bottom half. So I will go into a time lapse while I accomplish this. Even if the road is curved, it will still consider the building to be connected to the avenue. That is if it was connected to the avenue. Of course, we flipped the connection earlier to have these two extractors to be connected to the dirt road instead. Both the forestry main building and the small log yard has its own built-in fencing, so we did not need that extra unit space to add an extra fence. A reminder that we won't need to worry about connecting the main building and the barracks to the avenue because they do not have constant traffic emerging from the structure. To reduce the amount of redundancy, I've added at least one forest maintenance building, and also notice that the smaller plantations are set to alder trees. It's always a good idea to consider using different colored trees in order to give that sense of variety. I have intentionally placed the highway entrance ramp on the right side of the road so the trucks with goods from the processing buildings located on that side of the map will maintain right with minimal crossing to the other side of the road, thus helping to reduce traffic hiccups. We have set up more than enough that we may actually start adding these decorative fences. A lot of time was spent having to reshuffle the roads and building placements just to accommodate these fences, which will be all worthwhile after we have seen the whole extractor area pieced in together. The best part about conifer trees is that the large rocks have the same built-in trees, so adding them between plantations and aligning the trees will make it appear that the fields are larger than they actually are. So instead of just having square fields, you can design creative shapes for your forest extractor area. Another thing worth noting of forest extractor areas is the fact that they do not produce any pollution. So I really enjoy the idea of mixing these large water towers instead of having pumps along the river. In fact, there are no pumps whatsoever used in this entire city. Our drinking water comes from water towers, while our sewage are inland water treatment plants, which are already mixed in with the garbage facilities, so the ground pollution is isolated in select areas. I consider polluting inland is better than having poop water running down the river. Since we have an abundance of conifer tree plantations, I will make this into a fake alder tree field, which would alter the colors from dark to light green. It's not absolutely necessary to have actual plantations, for I believe that we have more than enough, and this storage facility should help balance the need of wood. I made an error by forgetting to flip the small tree plantations to the dirt road, and it will also require an extra unit space along the avenue for a fence. Therefore, this entire side will have to be readjusted slightly. We cannot forget about adding these fences. It is the entire purpose of why we have toiled so much just to reposition roads and buildings for the sake of adding the extra decorative fences. But look at how everything is coming together as a whole. Look at the different color plantations, the slight road curves, the variety of buildings is really starting to look like a neat forest extractor site. Whenever I see an opportunity, I try to add in more water towers, which looks great behind the barracks. The water towers mixed in with the forest extractor site fits perfectly because if there was a forest fire, there are water towers nearby to quickly extinguish the flames. But of course, that doesn't actually happen in the game where water from the towers are used to extinguish fire, but it is a neat idea. We had ample space to squeeze in a few small tree plantations, and remember that we are building on a slope. Since fields can conform to slopes, this was the perfect location for our forest extractor site, which is also near the highway for quick accessibility to export out of the city or to import to our commercial areas. And our forest extractor site is complete and can finally be powered up. We will also need to fill in this last portion, which will just be trees. But in case we do need more extractors, we have this space available. And there she is. We have completed the forestry extractor site. It is a relatively small area, but it looks rather neat in the corner. Notice the variety of buildings and the use of different colored trees to really make it pop. And also notice how it is not restricted to just a square field, especially when you mix in the barracks between the plantations and also adding in this rock, which really just blends in quite nicely. Let's take a closer look at the added fences, which makes it look really gorgeous. Look at that corner. And here is the farm maintenance building. Let's say we were driving along this avenue. Yeah, these fences really make a huge difference. Then even those water towers, you can notice driving along. Here we have the barracks on the left and the farm maintenance building on the right, which looks really awesome. There's nobody there except this guy. I guess he's taking a break. Everyone else is at work. The log yard right here. We go along this way. Yeah, it looks really nice and sweet. And also, let's say we're driving along this avenue. This is going to be our processing buildings, and this bridge was really a great choice, especially having this suspension, which makes it look like it can handle tons of weight. And let's zoom out again. And of course, we did not make this into a straight road, so you can't actually totally tell where the border is, but you know that it is somewhere there. And having this curve made a difference. So let's actually check where that border is. There it is. It's actually very close, and yet it was actually hard to kind of spot right away. What else is there to take notice? Of course, we are building on a slope, so this is why I actually decided to make our extractor site here, because I know that these plantations will conform to the slope and it will follow basically wherever it goes, and only the like barracks are on the flat surfaces, and so are these. What else can we do? However, I did make a mistake. For example, this should not be here. We should probably move it here, simply because I expect a lot of process trucks to be going along this side, and of course you want to reduce the amount of traffic, so they're gonna maintain right, and then turn and then enter the highway. So having this here would actually cause slight hiccups. It won't be that much, but I want to avoid any hiccups as much as possible. And what else? Let's actually add another feature here. There you go. See that it caused some slight hiccups just having the trucks emerge and come out. And what is going on here? We have, there must be crime. I think we found, we might have dealers here and using the forestry as a front. Well, I didn't expect that. Anyhow, okay, let's give these individuals a place to eat, because yeah, that's another thing that we did not add here. So I'm going to add in just some basic food necessities. Yeah, and there are cops here, dude. What happened? What are we planting? Okay, I think that's enough. That's more than enough. Alright, so at least now we got a place for everybody to eat, and let's actually try to fill in this area a little bit more. Not too much, because we want it to blend with these type of trees. Now I'm quite happy with this setup, and I don't think we'll be experiencing any alarming traffic issues in our extractor area. We can now move on with the next step, which is planning the road network and processing building placements. First things first, we are going to restart by redoing the entire layout by deleting roads and buildings that we will no longer use. We basically want to start fresh with an open field, but will however simply relocate the engineered wood plant buildings, then once again reposition them after we have a final road layout established. We save more money if we move structures instead of repurchasing them, otherwise we'll be wasting taxpayers' money and the mayor will not hear the end of it. The next order of business is to establish the different entry and exit points in the forestry processing site, and we will start by finalizing the highway ramps. We will focus on efficiency and function rather than constructing something more aesthetic like a dumbbell interchange. Function is always prioritized in our city builds, then aesthetic design comes in a close second. Third step is to determine the terrain level. Sometimes we neglect to check the terrain, and then after we had made an entire road network and start to plop down buildings is when we discover unsavory building edge cracks. Let us not get caught off guard by edge cracks and plan ahead to flatten areas we intend to plop down buildings. While we are determining the terrain level, we should also keep in mind the positioning of our avenues and highway ramps that will directly lead to the forestry processing site. For the next season, I am highly considering of turning on the vanilla unlimited soil mod, so we reduce the amount of time of me grabbing soil on the other side of the city. However, whenever unlimited soil mod is active, there's absolutely nothing stopping me from flattening the entire area. So at least now, the soil becomes a reminder to think of creative solutions. This direct bridge from the forestry processing site that connects directly and immediately to the highway is a key factor in reducing 1/2 of the traffic in this area. While the other half of traffic reduction is if trucks needed to go south, they would simply take the avenue, then enter the highway ramp to head south. However, all the other industry types are to the north, which leads to the corner and not deep within the heart of the city. Let us not forget to add an extra ramp on the avenue for other vehicles that may also want to head north. At least now they don't have to enter the forestry processing site just to find the ramp that leads to the highway. This is the highway exit that will lead directly to the forestry processing site. Despite the fact that the city can produce its own lumber, the game still finds it necessary to import more lumber from other city sources. It's definitely an extremely annoying part of the game. You could have an extractor building right next to the processing building, and yet the resource is still imported for some odd reason. However, I do have a vanilla solution that is 100% guaranteed, where there is zero imports all of the time. And Eureka! I now know what my next or so video will be about, and that is how to have zero imports for your industries. You may wonder, so why not use that technique here? Well, a straight answer is I've been using that zero imports method in my past cities, and I just wanted to do something normal for a change. In any case, watch out for that zero imports no mods video when it comes out in the near future. This fork is for the lumber trucks that comes from the extractor site, where the trucks will drive and keep right and continue right, going under the bridge, and will directly go into the processing area. Now you have a clear picture on our efficient road layout, which will help us maintain that over 90% traffic flow to up to over 100,000 population. Now that we have our main roads planned, it is time to build the actual lumber processing site. We will of course start with the avenue with tram tracks, and the road next to that, I will plop down these engineered wood plants that has the most production rate of plain timber, and they also do not produce any pollution. Whereas the pulp mills has the most production rate of paper but produces 30 pollution. Therefore, to confine or hide the contamination, we will use engineered wood plants as a barrier to contain the ground waste. There will be a redundancy of using pulp mills and engineered wood plants because they have the most production of timber and paper, so it is just something that we have to accept and work with. I will also place down a few recycling centers, which works with the overall theme. We can just consider these garbage facilities to recycle used paper. That is pretty clever if I do say so myself. And notice how I'm placing these recycling centers directly of what would be the middle of the entire forestry processing site. We are simply just doing our best to contain and isolate the pollution. Despite the fact that our lumber processing site is extremely compact, it will be free of traffic. And a technique that I use to reduce industrial traffic in compact spaces is to connect the buildings on different sides of the road. So instead of having all the entrances on one side, scatter them to different corners. Observe the following diagram. What I've learned when playing completely modless in the many past cities that I've built is that sometimes it is the minor tweaks that makes the biggest difference and further proves that you do not need mods to reduce traffic. The only mod that we already have is the human sense of logic that should not be replaced by automated machines. Life Made Easy mods are great, but we become dependent on these mods, and when we face a new predicament, the first thing we ask is there a mod for that? Nevertheless, I myself do play with mods, but I am not dependent on mods. Which is why whenever there's a new DLC, I will not have to wait for the mods to be updated. The mods that I do consider acceptable are visual mods to make the game more visually appealing, but does not change the management aspect of the game. This was when I realized that I completely forgot to mix in unique factories, which would aid in breaking the building redundancy of pulp mills and engineered wood plants. However, you should take notice of the surrounding details of the unique buildings. For instance, this modular house factory has built-in conifer trees alongside the building. Hence why I did not place it near the pollution-producing buildings, otherwise those built-in trees would just wither and die. However, this unique furniture factory does not have any built-in trees. Therefore, I decided to bump her right in the middle among the other structures that produces pollution. Another method of concealing pollution is by the use of rocks without trees, such as cliff or rock formations. The tram track has managed to run from one side of the map to the other, and yet it has not been activated the entire time. Having the tram loop around the unique factory should be a great idea so we can better appreciate the building models. However, I will not finalize the coastline design in this episode. We can now finally power up the lumber processing site and see if we encounter any traffic issues. And let us not forget to deactivate the evil traffic lights. We are also going to deactivate unique factories that require oil products, which we currently do not have. When you are able to use the unique factories, do not forget to push the production rate to 150% for maximum profit. Unique factories is definitely the best investment when it comes to improving your weekly income. Hence why every vanilla player should have the Industries DLC. To fill in the empty slightly sloped terrain space, we will provide housing for the families of our hard-working lumberjacks. My suggestion on how to create organic roads is to be comfortable using the freeform road tool. Try to have a theme of your organic roads, if they are going to be wide curves or short curves. As long as you stick to a theme and keep it uniform, then it should turn out okay. It just takes a lot of practice and being comfortable with the freeform road tool. You can experiment with having dead-end roads, or you can make it a rule to have no to only conditional dead-end roads. The choice is completely up to you. When it comes to zoning low-density self-sufficient residential buildings, I try to maintain at least a 2x2 unit size. Any smaller, I avoid completely. Also try to observe where the slope you are so you may reduce the amount of building edge cracks when the houses start to spawn. I can already see the trucks turning only right to go under the bridge and directly to the lumber processing site. Look at how minimal the traffic is on the avenue and everywhere else in general. All we need to do to fill in the empty sloped areas is to simply add trees, but we are going to make sure that we don't plant trees too close to the buildings that produces pollution. We have to wait until the zoned areas are filled in with housing before we can proceed to add in more trees between the roads. We wouldn't want to be planting trees on zoned areas that would eventually be demolished as the houses are constructed. It appears that we still have more space to zone more housing, and we also have enough to go with and finalize the empty spaces with trees. I could go into further detail by adding some props, parks, and walking paths, but perhaps we'll hold on to that for a future episode. We have to be very careful on how we decide to decorate by the border of the map. To keep it looking natural, we have to conform to what the other border looks like. So for this instance, we cannot plant too many trees, otherwise it would look too obvious that we are on the edge of the map. The last but not least, we will upgrade the roads in our forestry processing site with asymmetrical roads. We will provide 2 lanes on the right side to keep the traffic moving forward, since majority of the trucks originates from the highway and the extractor site. And finally, the forest industry is complete. And now let's take a look at the fruits of our labor, and from the top view, it doesn't look half bad. I really like our extractor site. Our processing buildings, however, is a little too compact, but we understand that this is the only space available. And it's also a nice addition to have these residential housing nearby. We have an empty space here. However, I am aware that there is a steep slope that, I could add in more residential roads, but it is a little too close to the actual processing site, and pollution and noise might become a problem. Let's try to remove some of these redundant buildings with lower tiered mills. And I'm also gonna go ahead and upgrade this side because this crack here is definitely bothering me. And we can also add a few more here just to remove this blank empty space. And there we have it. So now we have some lower tier buildings or lower height buildings. So now this doesn't look as redundant as it did before. This side we have absolutely no choice. We have to keep them here because these are the ones that produces no pollution. And you of course want to encase that or keep it away from the main avenue. More importantly, let's check out the traffic. Look how clear that is. I am guessing that it's definitely green. And here, of course, the trucks from the extractor site will turn right, go underneath, and proceed into the processing site, and thus exit going out there. That is the idea, and our traffic flow for this is at 94%. Look how green the roads are, even from here. Dude, there is crime going on in this area. I don't know why. It keeps happening. Yeah, I really don't know why, but it's just funny. I would say. Anyhow, that is the end of our episode. And thank you guys for watching. This side, I will do that in a future episode. And hope you guys have a pleasant day. I almost forgot to showcase if the forest industry is earning a profit. So let's check that out. So it is earning 8,000. And I mentioned in the previous 2 industrial areas that you should have at least 50 tons on both sides. That is to improve the odds of earning a profit. I don't have the exact numbers on what this should be, but having 50 tons has been safe, and that's what I've been doing, and it's been working so far. But if anybody has an actual accurate computation, then feel free to say so in the comments. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next episode.